Odds are good you have clicked on this video for one of two reasons. One, you are a loyal ETS21 viewer and you remember what I announced I was going to do all the way back in October. Or two, you've come onto this channel recently and you're just finding out about this for the first time. But for those who have either forgotten about it or have not even heard about this at all, let me catch y'all up. I am going to be coming to the United of Kingdom this June. I am flying in Tuesday, June 4th, and flying out Wednesday, June 19th, giving me 2 weeks and change in the United Kingdom. In this video, I'm going to be detailing what I am going to be doing over in the UK, and we will end the video with a reaction to Lost in the Ponds video, 7 things Americans need to know before visiting Britain. That way we can have a nice little discussion about it. I plan to vlog a lot of my trip and give you an experience of what it is like for an American, particularly one that's been raised in the South. My experience of the UK, I'm inspired by its JPS and Midwest Americans who have did it before me, and I'm just kind of taking inspiration from them. So shout out to both for paving the way for people like me to go over and make UK vlogs. Daniel will not be coming over with me simply because he has family commitments and he just doesn't have as much get up and go as I do, as someone who is single as a Pringle, doesn't have any kids, and just has a lot more get up and go in them. Maybe we'll get him over there eventually, but I'm going solo dolo over there to have a good time. I did mention that I'd be mentioning the cities that I'll be going to. At this time, I've booked up hostels, 1 or 2 hotels, and some other staying arrangements, as well as transportation via buses, 1 train ride, because I have video ideas about comparing US and UK trains. I'll get to that in a second. The plans for travel have already been made, as well as accommodations. I thought about possibly doing a meetup or just something where I can meet a lot of y'all, but I've decided against that for my own safety, and I'll be busy doing a lot of vlogging stuff, and I just want to be able to get as much as I possibly can while I'm there. Also enjoy myself while I'm there. It's nothing against all of y'all that have been watching over these past 3 years. It's just the way the world is. So here are the cities in alphabetical order. First up is Cardiff, Wales. I feel like there's not as much content we've checked out that has to do with Wales and the Welsh folk and the Welsh everything as of yet, and it looks like a very beautiful city, and I'd love to be able to go over there and visit it for all its quirks. And that's the only place that I'm coming in via train, by the way. Second off is Glasgow. It was between Glasgow and Edinburgh when it came to visiting Scotland, checking out the Anthony Bourdain episode on Glasgow, and also talking with folks from Scotland. They both seemed like very fun and very historical. It was like 5149 Glasgow. Next up is Liverpool. I've been a huge Beatle maniac all my life, ever since I was a teenager, and my dad gave me one of those CD things that you put in whatever it is, that where it pops up on the screen, and it had the entire Beatles catalog in it, and I've wanted to check out a lot of Beatles related things. And next up on my list, London, obviously. I have more than 1 day there. Everyone's been saying London is not all of the UK, don't just stay there, obviously. That's just common sense. But then again, it's a big city. Like, you could spend a whole week there and not do everything and explore everything. Just like, you know, New York or Tokyo or something like that. I get what y'all are saying, and I'm abiding by that as well. Next to last city on my list in alphabetical order is Newcastle. I am dog sitting for a nice couple that lives in Newcastle, and that's going to be my longest time there. Last up on my list, and for those of you who have been following this already know which one it is, Manchester. The whole reason that I'm even going to the UK in the first place was because Liam Gallagher announced that he is doing a definitely maybe 30th anniversary tour in the UK. Because this is the channel Oasis built, it was just made perfect sense to use that as an excuse to go over to the UK. I've revealed in the past which date I'm going to. If you want to see full up-to-date things that I'm going to be doing day of, follow us on our Instagram at EmbraceTheSuck21. Link is down in the description. So I initially thought that I was going to try and go busking in a lot of these areas that I have mentioned here, but I found that In order to earn money, I would need to apply for a special passport. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Basically, if I'm caught earning money without that special visa, I could risk getting deported. I don't want that to happen. I'd like to be able to come back. I'm fine monetarily for this, but if you'd like to reimburse my travels, I do have links down below to my Joyce card, Buy Me a Coffee, and PayPal. You can also leave a super thanks underneath of this video. What you'll get in return is you'll have your name at the end of all of the vlogs that I'll be producing from this trip. Not to be confused with our top tier of Patreon, which gets you on the end of each and every video, regardless if it's a vlog or reaction video. Your name will still be on there if you're at that tier, but also if you hit any of those donation links down in the description or a super thanks between the end of the vlogs, your name will appear at the end of the video as a thank you for helping make this trip possible. Now, I am open to suggestions of things I should do in the aforementioned cities. I already have ideas of what I'd like to do, and I've been seeking out a lot of things, not just, vlog type stuff, but also great locations for little homemade music videos for a lot of my original songs, covers of my choice, and covers that I know y'all will like that I will be posting on Spencer Joyce Music on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, as well as food and drink places to try that I'll be posting to my lifestyle channel, Spencer Joyce Lifestyle, on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. I also have a few experiences that I won't say too much about, but some surprises might come about on my travel sports channel, Spencer Joyce's World, with all those linked down below. So be sure you're subscribed to each and every one of them. That way you don't miss any of the videos that I plan to produce. If you do see me out in public, then feel free to come up, chat with me. I may come off as very unapproachable sometimes, maybe as antisocial, but I promise if you say, hey, love your videos, if you approach me, I will take the time for you. I promise that. All right. It's been a long time coming. It's something that Daniel and I have talked about for a while. Just with my life situation that has occurred in the last 18 or so months, I am ready to make some of those things that we've talked about a reality. And yes, it's disappointing that Daniel can't come, but he has more important fish to fry. So without further ado, let's get to our friend Lawrence's video here.
Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to visiting. Specifically, visiting one country while being a resident of the other. If you watched my last video, you'll know that I was tasked with giving British people advice on what to know before visiting the United States. Well, today we're flipping that video, not like that. As a British-born US citizen, I'm going to offer my unsolicited advice to Americans visiting Britain. And so
I was going to say, before you go in, this, I love the Lincoln with the glasses right there. I think that's a great shirt. If he sells that, let me know.
For those of you who are subscribed for part 1 of this series, this is part 2. And for those of you who are not yet subscribed, do that now! In the meantime, here's a rundown of some of the things you'll need to know before visiting my place of birth. The country, not the maternity ward. And I'm going to start by talking about plugs. And I know what you're thinking. Ooh, Lawrence, you talked about plugs in the last video. Is it really worth covering the same ground again? And I think it is. And the first reason that I say that is because I visit Britain more than I visit America. I actually have some props of my own. You see, in my last video, I talked about when British people bring their electronics to America, they need some sort of converter in order to take their British plugs and plug it into an American wall. Well, the same is true for Americans when they visit Britain, except there's a few things that you need to keep in mind. Firstly, voltage. Over the years, I have heard the occasional American express safety concerns over the 230 voltage of UK electrical outlets. This is because in the US, the standard voltage is between 110 and 120 volts. Well, worry not, the British plug socket is widely regarded to be the safest in the world. And don't take my word for it, Tom Scott did a wildly popular video called British Plugs Are Better Than All Other Plugs, and here's why. But the voltage disparity does mean there is one thing about which Americans should remain wary. Whether or not your device can convert 230 volts to 120. If not, you may need to buy a separate converter. Most American laptop power adapters already have one built in. If it says 110 to 240 volts, you're fine. Secondly, American to British converters usually have 2 plug holes in them. One for your 3-pronged plugs and one for your 2-pronged plugs. Words are hard. And thirdly, keep in mind that British plug sockets have an outlet switch, which stops and starts the flow of electricity. So if your computer isn't charging, it could be that this switch is flicked off. So a good counter to that is switch it on.
Okay. Now, I haven't revealed this yet, but sometime last year I almost did make a secret trip to the UK because I was talking to a girl over there, and long story short, it didn't work out. But I did buy these on Amazon. Here's what it is. Set that, and it's got that. It's similar to what he revealed on there, and I've got 2 of these just in case. Here's the thing. I'm not planning on taking my laptop just because I want to be able to force myself to unplug and go do something legendary in the UK, as Daniel likes to say. So let me know. Did I get the right one?
If there's one thing that I know about Americans, it's that they really like to drive. And if American tourists who've messaged me are to be believed, their driving even extends to when they visit Britain, even though they really don't have to. If that's you, then here are a few things that you'll need to know before driving on British roads. Firstly, and you're probably aware of this already, in Britain we drive on the other side of the road. Additionally, the steering wheel is on the opposite side of the car to what you would expect in American vehicles. And to make matters even more confusing, the name assigned to different car parts can differ as well. Instead of your windshield, you've got a windscreen. Instead of your trunk, it's a boot. And no hoods here. Instead, it's a bonnet. And you don't operate a turn signal. In Britain, this is known as an indicator. Now, something that American drivers often tell me about driving on British roads is that they were surprised by the number of roundabouts. Furthermore, in Britain, we seem to have a better understanding of how these work. See, in America, roundabouts do exist, but they're harder to come by, and when you do, they're almost treated like a novelty. And no driver ever seems particularly confident or knowledgeable about when it's their time to go. So, before visiting Britain, do your research on roundabouts as well as road signs. Because while both countries have pretty similar signs for stop, others might seem quite alien. Take, for example, give way, which means the same thing as yield. Or elderly people crossing the road, because as far as I can tell, the United States does not have an equivalent of this sign, which just instructs drivers to slow down if they see elder pedestrians trying to cross the road. Also, depending on how far west you end up, some road signs might appear in Welsh. This means you've either entered Wales or you're about to.
Okay. So I think these next 2 will coincide with one another, but I learned really quickly that renting a car is quite expensive in the UK, especially because the standard is manual there, and I am just learning how to drive manual, and there's quite a premium for automatic transmissions. So I'm going to opt out of that and instead take public transit, which I think we'll talk. I think Lawrence is going to touch on in this next little segment here. But yeah, no driving for me this go round. I had an idea to maybe like rent a car and drive it all the way from London to Glasgow, and I mentioned that in another video, but I've since decided against that. So let's see what Lawrence got to say about trains.
Appear in Welsh. This means you've either entered Wales or you're about to. But sometimes you'll encounter the odd, sometimes very odd American tourist who would prefer not to drive and instead get around on buses and especially trains. And here's the thing you need to know about Britain's trains, they're quite expensive. This is particularly true when we're not so much talking about the London Underground, but Britain's National Rail. However, there are ways to cut costs on those longer train journeys. The method known most commonly to British rail users is to book 90 days in advance, as the cheaper tickets typically go on sale at that time. The following is not a brand sponsorship, but it is something that my wife and I discovered and we think that more American travellers should know about. A lesser known method, open only to US residents, is to buy what's known as a BritRail pass. These offer good bang for your buck if you're travelling long distances or taking multiple rail journeys. If you're not sure which method is best for you, do some maths. My wife and I have used both methods depending on journey complexity. It just takes a bit of planning, which my wife is really good at. And by the way, it's important that I make this distinction between the London Underground and Britain's National Rail, and here's why.
Okay. That part I've already touched on, but Yeah, I have noticed that at least I'm booking buses through National Express, which by the way, bought up my old bus company that I worked for right when I got there. National Express uh, owned my school bus company that I worked for before I quit that, well, got fired from it, and started YouTube full time. So I know about that, but so far I'm only doing one train ride from London to Cardiff, and that's just going into Cardiff, not coming out. It's not a round trip thing. Just because I had a video idea of comparing U.S. trains versus UK trains, because that's another thing I'm planning on doing. I'm taking an Amtrak train up from Greensboro, North Carolina to Washington, D.C., stay overnight in a hostel, and then fly out. So that's what I've got planned. But yeah, uh, the buses through National Express are a lot cheaper, I've found. So let's see what he has to say about getting out of London. I think we may have some similar views on this, or not.
Between the London Underground and Britain's National Rail, and here's why. As somebody who used to live in London and has visited many times, I think it's fair to say that London has a lot of things to see. And so by all means, spend a lot of time in London. But if you're able, don't spend all of your time there. Because Britain has so much more to offer than that. What does it have to offer? The Cotswolds, yes. When my wife and I visited a few years ago, we found ourselves in the lovely surroundings of Gloucestershire. Not only did we stumble upon lovely countryside, we accidentally ended up in a cow field. And if countryside is your cup of tea, check out the Lake District, Rick Steves did. Or take in the majesty of the Yorkshire Dales with its rolling green hills that the universe built specifically for your Instagram clout and because it had nothing better to do. Or visit Wales and Scotland. Wales, Scotland.
Okay. Yeah, kind of what I was saying earlier. Yes, London is not all of the UK. That's just a fact. And I do have plans to visit both Wales and Scotland. Not all of it, but we'll see what we can do. Yeah, I mentioned the Cotswolds and Lake District, which are places I did want to go, and I seen what HJPS did there, and it looked a lot of fun. But I just had to make some sacrifices. But hopefully, it won't be the last time I go. You know.
Or visit Wales and Scotland. Wales, Scotland.
Tipping.
That's right, tipping. And you're probably thinking, Lawrence, in your last video you talked about how American restaurants expect you to tip and in Britain they don't. Why are you covering the same ground? Because while we don't have the tipping culture that the United States has, you can tip if you want. Some servers welcome it. So tipping, while certainly more important to American servers than British ones, is still something you can do in a lot of British restaurants, but just know this. The waiters and the servers will be a lot less hands-on than they are in America. For instance, they probably won't come by your table to ask you how that fish and chips is tasting today. In fact, now that I've jogged my memory, you might struggle to get them to come to your table at all, which can be quite tricky when you've got tickets to go see the Phantom of the Opera in 10 minutes and you just want to pay the bill and get the heck out of there!
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah, that's something that's been mentioned, is that tipping is not really required. I mean, in all technicality, tipping isn't required in the United States. It's just really frowned upon if you don't tip. It's pretty much you're basically paying the waiter's salary by that. It's really messed up, and it's quite a very. I'm opening up a big can of worms by even mentioning it, but it's good that Lawrence reiterated that tipping really isn't required in Britain. So thank you for that.
Tickets to go see the Phantom of the Opera in 10 minutes and you just want to pay the bill and get the heck out of there!
But that's also another thing. Like if I go out to a nice restaurant and I better clear out the night because the waiter, I may need to, make some effort to get the waiter to come back to my table. So that's good to know. whole world hates
And the
us.
final thing that I'm going to talk to you about today is how you as Americans are perceived in Britain. In all the years of doing this channel, I've met two kinds of American. The kind that says, I don't give a damn what those redcoats think. Or, the rest of the world doesn't like us. And it's that second viewpoint that I feel compelled here to address. Because what they really mean is the rest of the world doesn't like such and such president. Or the fact that America interferes with the governance of other countries. Something that Britain would never do. In other words, if the British...
Sorry. Thank you, Lawrence. Just thank you.
With the governance of other countries, something that Britain would never do. In other words, if the British have any level of disdain for Americans, it's mostly politically motivated or linguistically motivated. We don't normally have an issue with Americans themselves. In fact, I'll give you an anecdote. When my American wife and I stayed in a hotel in my English hometown of Grimsby, the staff acted all nervous around her. And not just because we're YouTube sensations, it was because of her accent. Just as Anderson, Indiana doesn't get many British people living there, Grimsby doesn't get many Americans. So I think they just thought she was plucked straight out of Hollywood like Julia Roberts in Notting Hill. And it was a novelty for them. Now you won't experience this in London. In London, just like the gongs of Big Ben, an American accent is a common sound. But wherever you are in Britain, some people will receive your American accent in a similar way to how some Americans will receive my accent. That it carries a certain amount of glamour, so use that to your advantage or disadvantage.
Yeah, I saw a comment under this video saying that someone from Texas, when they went to London, saying y'all and howdy a lot, got them a lot of free drinks. So I might use that to my advantage. But then again, just in general, it doesn't matter what nation you come from, y'all, I could care less what people think. Sorry, I had to get that out there.
An amount of glamour, so use that to your advantage or disadvantage. If this two-part video series has reminded me of anything, it is that in addition to living in both countries, I rather enjoy visiting them, and it is made a lot easier with all of this knowledge in mind. If you've yet to see part 1 in this series and you'd like to get some tips on what to know before visiting the United States, or you're an American and you're just curious about some of the things I might say, click this video now!
Okay. All right, before... I'm actually gonna play that one right after I give some thoughts here. So yeah, there's a lot of the biggest shock there was like how novelty my accent would sound, maybe not in London but everywhere else: Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, Glasgow, and Cardiff. I might use that to my advantage. We'll see. I won't take too much of advantage of it though. We'll just see. But another thoughts, like, and also like you mentioned, the Cotswolds and Lake District. That's for the second trip. Obviously, I can't let one trip dictate everything I think about a country, and that just wouldn't be fair because there are places that I wanted to visit other than what I just mentioned. Like, I would have loved to have gone to Edinburgh. I would have loved to have gone to the Lake District, Cotswolds, Bath, Brighton, York, Leeds, Swansea are also on my list as well. Wrexham, but just can't fit them all in. Just have to go back for a second trip. And yeah, I had to cut out Ireland completely, but I feel like has just as much of its own individual culture. And I knew that before ETS. Don't mix British and Irish. They're not the same thing. I think that trip deserves its own separate consideration there. But anyway, Lawrence, we're going to go ahead and watch the other part of this. This was a great one. Thank you for this one. Let's go ahead and click on this one.
Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to travel. specifically travel between the two countries. And today, in what is the start of a two-part series, I will be giving my British subscribers some advice on what to know before travelling to the United States. And I know what you're thinking, ooh, Lawrence, I thought you didn't like giving unsolicited advice. And I don't. My team are making me do this because I'm a British and American citizen and therefore some sort of expert. And so since I have visited both countries on 4 billion different occasions, I suppose I might as well tell you what I've learned. And if you're watching this video and thinking, who the heck is this guy? That probably means you're not subscribed to this channel. So I've just got 2 words for you. Do that now. That's 3 words.
We already did. If you haven't and you're watching this, go subscribe to him. Both of those links to both of these videos are in the description right next to my personal channels and all of those tip jars.
In the meantime, here are 7 things that British people ought to know before visiting the United States.
Airport security.
One thing that I'll never get used to is being touched up and down by people in rubber gloves. And this is especially true in airports. And that, unfortunately, was the best way we could think of to segue into airport security. And don't get me wrong, nobody in either country likes the drudgery of having to haul your suitcase onto a conveyor belt only for a stranger to open it up and reveal to the world your collection of tubes.
Dear God.
I'm talking about my camera equipment, you dirty little... But pound for pound, I'd say that this process is a little less stressful in Britain. You see, it's often noted that American airport security is little more than theatre. And I don't mean that all of the agents start singing Jesus Christ Superstar. I mean that it's all for show. Take off your shoes. Why? Are you inviting me into your house? Make sure all of your electronics are in a separate tray. People think it's easy being a YouTube sensation. And then when you're done with all of that, make sure you pull your trousers back up after they fell down because you removed your belt. To be fair, that happened to me in British airports too. And then there's American immigration officers who sternly ask you questions like, what is the nature of this visit? What's your mother's maiden name? What's in the box? That was Brad Pitt in 7. My advice to you there is don't panic unless you're Gwyneth Paltrow. Again, it's theatre. Speak calmly, truthfully, and don't forget to project! Not that kind of theatre.
Yeah, American airport security, pretty much after 9/11, it's all theater, really. Like, that's a whole other video in itself, but to the British folk that are watching, is it that have visited America? I guess Britain, it's not as extraneous, is not as headache-inducing. Let me know.
Calmly, truthfully, and don't forget to project! Not that kind of theatre.
Getting around.
People say to me, Lawrence, I want to visit America, and when I'm there, I want to see New York City, the Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls for some reason, Texas, like the whole state, and then Disney World. Well, I've got news for you. Unless you plan to be here for 6 months or you own a time machine, that's not going to happen. Because that would be like 10,000 miles of journey time. So when visiting the United States, it's a good idea to pick one kind of micro-region. Then once you've got that down, figure out how you're going to get around. After all, I'm sure you've heard me mention before that America isn't as good as Britain when it comes to trains, buses and broomsticks. Depending on where you are in the country, your best bet is probably to rent a car. Then of course you'll have to contend with driving on the opposite side of the road, operating a larger vehicle than you're used to and having no idea what some of the road signs mean. Either way, it's important to figure out all of this before visiting the United States so that you don't end up stranded on the interstate thumbing down vehicles like it's the 70s. I mean, that's how I met Chainsaw Jim and I no longer have a shed.
Oh man, I love his delivery sometimes. But yeah, pretty much we've mentioned on the channel before that you basically need a car to get around anywhere in the United States. You have to drive. Amtrak and like just trains in general, like they don't really cover that much ground, and buses like Greyhound and Flixbus and Megabus, those are hit or miss. I mean, I had a good experience with Flixbus when I went up to New York City, but then I also drove from North Carolina to Washington, D.C., which is about I would say about, excuse me, say it's about a 5-hour drive. And yeah, and Great Britain would fit multiple times into the state of Texas alone. So yeah, that's good advice. Pick a certain like corner of the country don't try and do it all at once. It's just not going to happen. Like, you know that I'm going to Britain and I'm not going to do everything at once. That's just impossible.
In this 21st century world, there's a good chance that when you visit America, you'll be bringing with you a little something called electronics. This might be a laptop computer, a mobile phone, or other things that vibrate. Either way, at some point, there's a good chance that you're going to need to insert it into a plug socket. And here's the thing, on either side of the pond, plug sockets look different. How do I know this? Because I did a video all about it, and I've lived in both countries. Basically, American plug sockets are completely and utterly a little bit smaller than British ones. Additionally, while most of them do have 3 holes, some only have 2, and I'm still talking about plug sockets. Why am I telling you all of this? Well, because your British plug sockets will not fit into those holes. And you might be thinking, oh no, what am I going to do? How do I edit my videos while on holiday? If you're a content creator. If you're not, then just ignore that example. The point is, just like in your Year 9 chemistry classes, there is a solution. That solution is a converter that you plug into your plug like that, and then that bit goes into the wall, and then you get the American electricity-ness. And now you might be asking, where can we get these, Lawrence? And the answer is simple. On the World Wide Internet Web.
Yeah. Same thing with the other one, with the plugs. This is UK. This is US. I don't have another example here, but this is for when I go over to the UK, where I covered that. Moving on, sales tax.
Subject of purchases, there's one major difference between shopping in the UK and shopping in the United States. In the UK, you'll be used to walking through the shopping aisles and thinking, ha, look at the price of that meat. It includes value-added tax. Isn't that amazing? Nobody actually does that. But that was my way of illustrating that in Britain, the price you see on the price tag is the price that you pay at the till. In America, which is still in this direction, this is not the case. In fact, the reason that I include this is that I discovered it as a visitor myself. During a visit to Portland, not the weird one, but the one in Maine, I bought a Beatles album because it's just something I do on every continent. And I was fairly happy to find that, oh, look at this. It's under $10. That is a bargain. So I take it up to the till, pull out a big $10 bill, not that big, all the cash is the same size, and say, here you go, have a bit of that, until she rings it up. And it says $11.57. All right, I'll pull out some coins. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but it is a bit of a surprise when you first do it.
Yeah. I am looking forward to going to Britain, and the price I see is the price I pay. And I'm not required to tip if it's like a restaurant or a pub. Or like a Tesco or a Greg's. The price I see is the price I pay. I like that. America, you should do that.
I mean, it's not that big of a deal, but it is a bit of a surprise when you first do it. One thing that stands out to me about people that visit the United States is that we do tend to visit the tourist hotspots. And this makes sense because they're tourist hotspots. They have the things you need like entertainment, shops. But we often forget that there are some lesser visited places that are also worthy of your time. Like, for example, Mackinac Island, which is not pronounced Mackinac Island. Or, instead of Orlando, Florida, check out St. Augustine, Florida. Said to be the oldest city in the United States and home to old Spanish architecture. Whatever it is, if you want to see America, don't be afraid to be a contrarian. It's okay to tell your friends back home, no, I didn't go to Las Vegas. We spent a week in Asheville, North Carolina, which is probably where the conversation will end, but you'll have had good memories.
Yes, 100% what he just said. And it's something that y'all have given me the respect of, is pointing out other places that are not London or you know what I'm saying. But yeah, my personal recommendations: go to Charlotte, go see the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and Asheville, and all the go to the mountains, have some barbecue while you're there. Go to Nashville, go to Atlanta. Those are my recommendations. Don't just go to New York or Washington, D.C. or Miami or, I don't know, Los Angeles or Las Vegas. There's a lot more here. A crap ton more. And that deserves its own video itself. Moving on.
North Carolina, which is probably where the conversation will end, but you'll have had good memories.
Tipping.
Most people are probably aware that the United States has a tipping culture, much to the annoyance of cows. But that tipping culture also extends to restaurants and bars, and British people for whom tipping isn't a requirement back home are often confused about how much they should tip. Well, in a sit-down restaurant where servers come to your table, it is recommended that you tip between 15 and 20% of the bill. So if the bill reads $75, then you add on
$11.25 to $15.
$11.25 to $15. And Lawrence, would you do this at Burger King? And the answer is no, because I don't go in Burger King. But if I did, the answer would still be no, because fast food restaurants don't expect you to. I hope. Otherwise, I've been a complete for the last 16 years. And for a beer at a bar, it's a good rule of thumb to tip between $1 and $2. Just don't get so drunk that you forget this step, like I did 12 years ago at the Doubletree in Westminster, Colorado.
Man, he sounds British. That's for damn sure. But yeah, 15 to 20% for a sit-down restaurant, $1 to $2 for an alcoholic beverage. And unfortunately, tipping has gotten a little out of control here. Like at fast food, like Subway, now there's like a tip option there. Like that's again, it's a whole thing, but we discussed it. Checking out the other video.
Forget this step, like I did 12 years ago at the Doubletree in Westminster, Colorado.
Your accent.
And finally, something that I've benefited from both as a visitor and a resident of the United States is this. Some Americans incorrectly assume that I'm smart just because of my accent. And what I'm saying to you is, use that to your advantage. In fact, this is especially true if you do visit the places that aren't necessarily tourist hotspots. You see, in major cities like New York or Chicago, a British accent is a dime a dozen, to the extent that nobody really asks me about my accent here. But back when I lived in Indiana, they treated me like royalty. But if you come here and say words like tomato, banana, water, Americans will absolutely love you, or think you have a weird diet. Either way, your accent alone is a good icebreaker if you're the sort of person who likes to be talked at. And if you're not, then don't talk.
So the opposite effect of an American going over to Britain, other places other than London. Maybe if you hear this accent, you assume that I'm dumb. And I hope that throughout this journey, I've proved that I'm not dumb. But then again, there are some things I am dumb. I'm not saying I'm smart. I is learned. So whatever. Yeah, but also that's a true thing. If you hear a British accent, especially, if you don't expect it, if you're not in a big city, then it's such a novelty thing. We all automatically assume that you're smart because we've seen that's how the British accent is portrayed here in the States.
Sort of person who likes to be talked at. And if you're not, then don't talk. I suppose a bonus piece of advice would be just have fun. America is a very surprising country with very surprising people. In fact, in part 2 of this series, I will be advising some of those people on what to know before visiting Britain. So click my bell if you'd like to be notified of that.
Okay. All right, we can end that there. Yeah, both great videos from Lawrence of checking out like culture and visiting as an American to Britain and Britain to America. And again, thanks for watching this one. Britain, I know I'll have a great time over in Britain. But again, all those links to help donate to reimburse and get your name at the end of the vlogs, those are down in the description. You can also leave a super thanks as well. I can't wait to go over in about a month. Consider subscribing and having that notification bell on. That way you don't miss any of the uploads on this channel, as well as the other channels where I plan on posting content from the UK to linked down in the description. And we'll see y'all next time. Cheers.